all of the big guys in the industry told me that it could not be done. They said, "You're not going to get this deal done. It's never going to happen."
Representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn. Hey, Jerry, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, I am going to read a little intro for the audience because they may not know who you are. If they've probably listened to you on some different podcasts as a franchisee, because that's really where you got your start. But let me get into a little bio to give everybody a little bit of indication of who you are. So Jerry Pugh, a former paramedic, turned serial entrepreneur who's built and scaled businesses across auto, agricultural, and now fitness. You opened up your first Workout Anytime franchise in 2017, grew to become the brand's largest franchisee with nearly 20 locations. And this year in 2025, you made the leap from franchisee to franchisor. You acquired the majority ownership of Workout Anytime. You stepped in as the CEO, and it's about a 200 unit brand. You have some private equity partners. So you're now leading this entire franchise system with some big lofty goals. But when I heard that, I heard your story of being a franchisee, going to franchisor. I figured I'd get you on here so you could tell everybody how easy it is being a franchisor and how the grass is actually greener. So how does that sound?
Yeah, right.
Why don't you get into, because I got a lot of questions for you, but why don't you give a little bit of your story, just quickly, like the 60 seconds of how you got into franchising and then growing to become that largest franchisee.
Sure. Yeah. I was actually a member of Workout Anytime and just liked the brand. Ended up buying a franchise in 2015, opening my first club in 2017. Just really, we were lucky, I guess, or maybe we just picked the right spot. But we followed the systems and hit a home run with our first location, and our second location did the same thing. And we had three locations within 12 months, and just really started picking off some struggling locations, learned how to turn around struggling locations, and um, just we figured we hit on something. And I guess Workout Anytime for me was a passion. I mean, fitness was a passion, but entrepreneur, I always tell everybody when sometimes people come in here and they say they're passionate about fitness, I said, well, you better be passionate about making money, because a passion about fitness is not going to make you, it's not going to make you successful in business.
You get real unpassionate, if that is a word, about fitness when you are having to write $10,000, $20,000 capital calls every month. You are no longer passionate about fitness when that happens. So
That's right.
I agree 100%. So going to that 19, I think, do you have 19 locations at the peak or at where you are now?
We actually had 20, and we ended up closing. That was painful. We ended up closing a location that was a learning lesson. But
I was
we backed up
just
to 19.
I was just about to ask you because it's like you found the pot of gold at the end of every rainbow. But I'm like, almost 20 locations. There had to been some lessons learned along the way. And I've been there, man. I've been the guy that's learned a lot of painful lessons. So I get it. But yeah, talk a little bit about some of the things that may not have worked as you grew, because I've had locations myself as a franchisee. Some of them were just like you couldn't do anything but just make a lot of money. It was amazing. Very, very lucky. And others, the opposite, very unlucky. So talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced as you grew some of these.
Yeah, the 20th location, It was a location that we didn't actually choose. It was a location that a franchisee had walked away from, and the franchisor said, "Hey, can you step in, take this location?" And so we made the decision to do it, and um, it was wrong location, wrong city, um, wrong size club. It was in Dallas, and you're going in Dallas with a 8,000 square foot location, going up against all the big gyms, and that has everything. And it really, we had already moved on to our larger clubs with wellness suites and all those things, and it was just, I made the decision after about a year when we were losing, $25,000 a month, that we were said, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We're closing. And that was painful. It was the first location we had to close, but it was a good, it was a good lesson for us that, we can't win every time. It's time to walk away. And that was okay. We back down to 19 locations, and we took the equipment and moved it somewhere else. But that was, it was a bit painful, but I was okay with that. It was
Did
the
you
first
buy
time we'd
out
had.
did you buy out the lease on the landlord? Like how did that
We
work out?
did. We just said, "Hey, you know, we'll make you an offer." And it was actually, the landlord was pretty okay with it. We got a guy to negotiate the lease, and it was a pretty simple buyout.
Was it more or less than a year of rent?
6 months.
That's great.
Yeah.
Were you concerned that it might be more when you first started thinking about closing it? Were you concerned that it might be like a year or 18 months or 2 years of rent to buy them out?
We were, because we had about a 9-year personal guarantee left on the lease, and you know it that though you're never really forced usually to pay those, and the landlord just, the attorney, we had a guy negotiating, and the attorney said, "Hey, we'll offer you this just to walk away," and the guy took it, and we walked away. So
I think that's a great lesson. I think a lot of people, myself included, I've been a part of locations that were requiring capital calls for way too long. And I had an opportunity to sell or close, and I didn't. One of it was fear of, boy, if I bring this to the landlord, they're just going to hammer me and it's going to be very difficult, or I'm not going to be able to find a buyer, or I think I can turn this around. Well, 12 months later, I'm still paying the same amount in capital calls. I paid more in rent, and I'm still in the same situation. And so a lot of those times I look back and I advise franchisees now, like just cut the cord if you need to. Like if that's the smartest decision, if you are here a year from now, like look into the future, if you're in the same spot, what would you be telling yourself to do right now? But for some reason, a lot of franchisees, they don't want to do that for a lot of different reasons. And I think some of it is, one, they don't want to fail or be seen as a failure, or even have a conversation with the franchisor about it, and they think they can just turn it around. Anything else you would add to that little list?
yeah, I wish we'd have walked away sooner. And the franchisor was not happy about it. I mean, and he's a friend of mine. I mean, he's a really close friend of mine, and we became friends over the 8 years. He actually, I say, handpicked me to be his successor. And when I told him we were going to close the club, he said, "Don't do it." And I said, "Steve, then you take it over." I'm not keeping this club open. So, um, and there was another workout anytime that was close enough that we transferred all the members. So the other workout anytime was able to benefit from us moving, look, so it worked out.
Well, I'm glad everything didn't turn to gold for you, because I like talking to people that know what a challenge looks like. And I like doing business with people that have been, faced challenges in the past. So, and I think a franchisor, seeing now you're on the franchisor side, I think you probably have some more empathy for franchisees. So let's talk about that transition from franchisee to franchisor. Like, when did that first enter your mind, becoming the franchisor?
During the COVID shutdown, I actually talked to Steve in 2020 when we were shut down, and I said, "Hey, if this opportunity ever," and I think at that point I maybe only had 5 or 6 clubs, and I said, if this opportunity ever comes up, I'd just like to throw my name in the hat and just, just as part ownership. And we kind of just, I continued, I said, I planted that seed and continued to, water that seed, fertilize that seed through the years. And really, it was good that it took that long because I was able to, through the years, I really almost started thinking like a franchisor, manifested that. So when the time came, I was ready for it because I didn't really think as a franchisee anymore because I was everything I did, I would think, well, how would I do this if I was the franchisor? How would I approach this as a franchisor? So I would say, how would I look at this as a franchisee, and how would I look at this as a franchisor? So I was really prepared, and we had done so many things inside this brand. We created the new model in 2021. They allowed me to do that, and like I said, we've closed clubs, we've moved clubs, we small clubs, big clubs, we've done everything inside this brand. So I was really prepared at the time that we were able to do this.
So, like, what were some of those things that kind of challenged you as a franchisee? So you were normally be thinking of things as a franchisee, making decisions or seeing decisions that the franchisor was making as a franchisee. But then when you started to put on like, hey, how would this look as a franchisor? What were some of those things that you saw differently?
Well, and I noticed that we were starting to struggle in probably 19 or 20 against probably in certain areas against certain brands. And that's when I approached Steve and I said, okay, if I'm the franchisor, how would I like, what would I think about this? And I
Mm,
approached him and said, I would like to, pitch this to you. Like, I'm thinking this, we need to build a larger gym, offer more amenities. And this was really before anybody else was doing this. Like, there was no wellness. There really wasn't a lot of wellness in 2019. It was pre-COVID.
yeah.
And I said, I want to build a wellness suites. And it was an area where it was an area inside the gym where you have to scan and go in. And we built that in 20, no, in 2020, we started building it. The concept was 2019. We actually opened it in 21. And he said, okay, as long as you protect the brand, I'm good with it. So we went from our concept, and when I came into the brand was 5,000 square feet, 5,000, 5,500, to a 15,000 square foot gym with a wellness suites, with a group training room, a functional area with turf, which was not even our brand. And it completely changed our model. And now all the clubs are being built with those wellness suites. So, I was always thinking, okay, how can I make the brand better? How can I, because I was always thinking I need to beta test things. I need to make the brand better. So I was thinking, how would I do it as a franchisor? And how would I, you know, but always trying to protect the brand. That was the most important thing to me, was to protect the integrity of the brand.
When did he tell you protect the brand? Is that where that term came from? Or were you thinking about that before?
Both, because it's super. I always say I'm a rule follower. Like, I don't like to, if the guidelines. I like to stay within the guidelines, stay within the rules. But Steve always said that, Jerry, I trust you. I know you'll, as long as you protect the integrity of the brand, as long as you're just trying to enhance the brand, not change the brand. And that was always me. That's who I am. I just wanted to make the brand better, not change the brand. And that's really still where we are today. We're not trying to change Workout Anytime. Workout Anytime, I think, just needs tweaking. We're constantly tweaking here and there, trying different things to make sure that it still looks like a Workout Anytime. Maybe it's 10 years, it's 8 years down the road from where we are, but it still looks similar to the club that we built in 2017. It's just better, a better version of it.
at Front Street, we have a lot of private conversations with the partners, and then we have these conversations with our portfolio brands. And we have conversations with brands that are thinking about becoming portfolio brands or we're looking at working with. We say protect the brand. We use that term often because like that's the goal, is to protect the brand, because if the brand becomes damaged, everybody becomes damaged. And you want the franchisees rowing in the same direction. You want to improve on things. You want to, you want to challenge assumptions maybe. You want to make things better, but you've always got to protect the brand. Just like a partnership. You have a partnership, you can't just, one partner can't be making selfish decisions that just benefit them. They need to make decisions for the partnership, for that entity, like a board of advisors, a board of directors. It's the same thing for a franchise brand. You need to be thinking, how can we protect the brand? Because a brand that's protected, that's built on a solid foundation, that is growing and is healthy, that brand is worth something, and it protects the franchisees. The same things that protects the brand protects the franchisees. So I love that you said that. I don't think I've had other franchisors on the podcast that have said that. But as soon as you said that, I wanted to hone in on that a little bit. And when you talk about like improving, making things better, especially with wellness, you were thinking about that before others were thinking about that in the fitness space. And I also think about like Massage Heights rebranded, and they are now Heights Wellness Retreat, because they've had to innovate and not just be about massage. And so Shane over there is kind of leading the charge with that. But that's a big move. But you did that early on, and now it seems like, of course, that's the best thing to do, is to get into wellness, because wellness does really well today. But why, when did that first come to mind? Why did you start thinking about wellness and talking to the franchisor about that?
You know, when I first came into the brand, we had tanning and hydro massage, and we were, we were a gym. I say we were just a gym with weights and tanning and hydro massage, and that doesn't really appeal to a lot of people. So I'm wanting to talk to the other. That appeals to 20% of the population. I'm wanting to talk to some of the other 80%. Like, how can I get that other part that wants to come in and do red light therapy, get in the sauna, another type of massage, just hang out in the gym, um, do other things in there that we're not currently doing. And that's when I made the decision, like do cryo. And those are the things. And it's not really the cryo chambers, because we want low touch points. So we do things like the cryo from hydro massage. It's the dry cryo. Um, so that's what I wanted to do, is how many amenities can we put in our premium suites that are low touch, that we don't have to manage all the time. And so that's what I wanted to do. Like, how much stuff can we jam in there to raise our prices, to get as much as we can, to get our premium up as high, and then to get more people to buy the premium. That was our goal. How can we get our premium to, up to 80%? And we're getting to 70, we're up in the 70% range in premium. Because when I came into this brand, we were probably selling 20% premiums. Now we're selling 70% premiums in our clubs that have those premium suites. And 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 that was our goal. Like, how do we get more people to come to the gym and not just think about lifting weights, but how do I come in and feel better? And how do I sell more premium memberships? And that was our goal. And that's why we started thinking about it.
I think more franchisees should probably be thinking about that, talking to their franchisors. And franchisors, this should be a topic that you are always thinking about. Like, I have thought partners on ChatGPT to help me think about this for our brands. When we are on calls with our brands at Front Street, we are always thinking, how do we increase lifetime value? How do we increase retention? How do we sell more to the same customer? And in selling more, that customer being more sticky and wanting to stay around more, like that. Or you could just, if you want, churn customers, have low retention rate, and be really good at spending money on Facebook and Meta and Google just to get more customers in all the time. But I think there's low hanging fruit that a lot of people in franchising can do to increase the average order size, increase the lifetime value of their customer. So I really hope that people start to take note of that and thinking, how do I maximize this customer that I already have in my door or in my Rolodex, in my CRM? Because like that's how, and that's direct, that I mean that profit go, there's a lot more profit in an upsell than there is acquiring a new customer.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Z's and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
So anything
Absolutely.
else on that and how that's actually played out? Anything else that you'd want to add either to franchisees or franchisors?
Well, we focused on that too. Like that was one of the things we said, how do we increase our lifetime value? So we said there was products that we like, there was a company called V, and we said, how do we reduce churn? So we did put in something in all our locations that a churn reduction. So it's V engaged. So we started engaging our customers more. Like there was, it would alert us and say this customer or this member's usage has went down compared to what they were. So you should text them, call them, email them, get them to come in for a class, or just say, hey, send them some random email about something, which is what we've done. And our churn has reduced. It's at the lowest levels it's ever been at, and our lifetime value has went up. Our lifetime value is probably, I mean, when I tell people our lifetime value is 24 months, it blows them away because they're like, that's unheard of to have a lifetime value of 24 months. But that's what we're seeing. And when I first came into the brand, our lifetime value was 10 months less than that. But in our average, that we're getting per member now is probably $10 higher than it was when we first came in the brand. So we've made huge, that's one of the focuses we've had over the last 5 years. It's just, we've made huge strides there. So, the bottom line, we've learned a lot. We've learned so much over the last 8 years, just focusing on the right things.
What did you think was going to be true as a franchisor that wasn't necessarily true? So did you have any misconceptions of what it was actually going to be like, or decisions made or conversations internally that, or, something at the franchisor level that really wasn't true?
I think I've spent a lot more time talking to the franchisees. I was in the trenches with them. And so, I'm friends with a lot of them, but I think I've spent a lot more time talking to them than I think I thought I would. Just probably earning their trust. I don't think that there wasn't really, because I think I was so intertwined with this office because I had such a, we were the largest franchisee. We won, we were a 4-time franchisee of the year for the last 4 years. So I was really in tune with this office anyway. I always felt like I was a extension of this office. So I knew a lot of stuff that was going on. So I don't think there was a lot of surprises, I guess, but I think I've spent a lot more time traveling, visiting franchisees, and just talking to franchisees, and um, probably spent less time focusing on things that I thought I would focus on, um, and more time, um, I guess, just in relationships as a CEO than I thought I would. I thought I would focus more on super important things, and it's been more focusing on relationships and just my vision of where the company's gonna go, and really re-engaging these franchisees, and things are going really well. I mean, we're to be honest with you, we're probably going to have the fourth best year we've ever had, and that was really no momentum. We had zero momentum, not a lot of momentum in our pipeline, which we are, we're getting serious momentum now towards the end of the year. I think next year will be the biggest year we've ever had. But
That's great.
um, I think, and it's a lot, it's from within. We don't, we're our existing franchisee base is super excited about the future.
How do you how do you see it now? And since it sounds like you've been doing a lot of listening, a lot of building of relationships, um, and you were a top performer, like franchisee of the year multiple times. Like it's great when you're franchisee of the year. It's great when you are the top performer, but when you're average or below average with your numbers, like what have you learned about franchisees in general that are average or below average? Like how do you help them? How do you work with them differently? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do when I come in is we just completely revamped the field support team, and I brought over from my club side a guy that has 30 years experience in the industry, and he and I had spent a lot of time really digging into my numbers and understanding what why our clubs were successful, and looking at our clubs that were the most successful. And so we're really going to take that to the franchisee base, because I honestly, when I came over here and started talking to them, the ones that were successful really didn't understand their numbers and didn't understand why they were successful. So we understood why we were successful. So that's one of the things that I wanted them to understand now, like, know your numbers. Why are you successful? And now we're helping them understand why they're successful. And the ones that want to scale, we're going to help them scale. And the ones that are not successful, you can look at every single one of their gyms. They're out of compliance. They're not following the system. They're out of compliance from either they're not advertising. Operationally, they're out of compliance. So, and we want to help those people who are not doing the right things either exit the system or start doing the right things. And, I'm like I told you start earlier, I'm a rule follower, and I'm going to hold people accountable. And, that's one of the things I said when I took this over. There's a new sheriff in town, and there's going to be a high level of accountability in this system, higher than it's ever been.
Do you see that as part of protecting the brand?
Absolutely. Our oldest clubs are in 4 states, or 5 states mainly. It's, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina. That was our first 5 states that we were really big in. Those states, we've got a lot of clubs that we really need to make sure and get them up, lift them up. And we're focusing on those 5 states first, and make sure that, I want to lift those states up and get those clubs really up to brand standard. Um, and because I want the franchisees that are really reinvesting in this brand to know that we are protecting the brand, because it is super important.
So that's who you're kind of focused on, the franchisees that are following the system, that are doing the things that you're asking them to do, and then are having a level of success. How do you get them to either expand more, want to expand, help them expand? What are you doing differently than what was being done before? Because I mean, you've done it. You have that playbook, expanding to 20 locations. So how do you help these franchisees get to 3, 6, 9, 20 locations?
They didn't understand scale. They didn't understand um, some of them, they came to me and said, why are other brands getting more multiples than we are? And I said, well, you're selling one club or two clubs. You have to understand that the reason my club's valued a lot more is because we had 19 locations and our EBITDA was much higher. And, until I started talking in terms to them like that, they didn't even understand what I meant. So I started explaining to them, if you get an EBITDA of 3 million or higher, then you have an opportunity to sell at higher multiples. And now that we have private equity backed, we have other private equity that's going to come in and back our franchisees. So, our franchisees that really want to grow, now we've got private equity that's coming in and saying, hey, we'd like to talk to this franchisee about helping them grow, the ones that really want to grow. So there is private equity money out there to help these guys grow, and they're excited. And there's some really good operators in here that have come in from other brands that maybe worked at a brand and then have come in, and they're really good operators, and they have maybe 5, 6, 7 clubs, and they're just not at the. And I've said, guys, you can own 20 clubs, you can own 30 clubs, and then you can exit this brand in 10 years and sell out for big money. And they didn't realize that till I started talking. They'd never been talked to like that before. They didn't understand that they can, own 20, 30 clubs and have, $5 million in EBITDA. And they're like, okay, I understand now. So
Yeah, and there's safety
now
in
they're
that.
looking at it in terms of that.
There's safety in having multiple clubs, a lot of clubs, consistent EBITDA, increasing year over year, spread across certain geography. Like that's more attractive to somebody that's going to be paying a higher multiple private equity versus just one massive club or something like that. Or they might be a couple of them that kind of group things together, and they can sell, instead of 10, there's 3 of them that have 10, and they can sell 30 to private equity. So let's talk about private equity. I'm guessing, based off of your bio, you did not have private equity experience in your past, but you seem really smart to be able to learn about that stuff. So I don't know if you had a quick learning curve or if that was, part of the whole plan all along, because somebody needs to bring the money, in addition to, like your money or maybe some other private money, to help the original owner have some type of liquidity. Now that's just me from the outside looking in. So give some color around that and let me know where I might be off on some of that, or dive into that story a little bit.
So in February of 24, I had kind of given up on owning this brand. And a friend of mine who did have some experience on transacting some companies with private equity had recently sold his company and had started a new gig, and he was raising money. And I called him and I said, hey, kind of giving up on my dream to own Workout Anytime. So can you help me raise money to open up more clubs? I said, I'm fairly, um, I'm pretty leveraged right now. We've got these 19 locations, fairly leveraged. And he said, well, what's your EBITDA? And I was like, probably 3. And he said, yeah, we can probably get some money. And then he said, he said, why don't you just start your own brand? I said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm very loyal to Workout Anytime. And he said, do you still want to own this brand? And I said, I do. And he said, then let's go get it. And then, and this was his first deal. And all of the big guys in the industry told me that it could not be done. They said, you're not going to get this deal done. It's never going to happen. And 2 months
Just
later, we
real
had an
quick
LOI.
on that, is the reason that a lot of advice that you got was because most private equity companies want majority? Is that one of
Yes.
the reasons? Okay.
Well, and I wanted a debt deal. I wanted a debt deal, and I didn't want to give up majority. And I wanted, because I kept saying I didn't want to take on an equity partner realistically early on. And so when Pete and I first started talking, and even when I first started talking to Pete, I said I'd rather take on debt, not equity. So he went out first and found me a debt partner, and he had a debt partner that was willing to. They pledged $15 million to the deal. And he said, okay, we have a debt partner. Now let's go find equity. So I think we went, because we found a debt partner first, and then we went and found equity. But I think it's because I think there's two reasons. I was a educated buyer. I was the largest franchisee. They weren't going to, I mean, I say a sophisticated buyer. I was somebody they were not going to, I could come in and hit the ground running. They weren't going to have to go out and find somebody to run the company. So I think that's another reason that I probably ended up with maybe, I don't know, maybe majority, but it really shouldn't. I mean, for me to end up with majority, it probably never happens that way. But, it, and a lot of the guys he's talked to in this industry said, I don't know how you pull this off. It should not have happened that way, but you should write a book. That's basically what they told him. For me to end up with 54% of this company, is probably, it's rare for me to end up with
So
54% of this company.
one of the one of the ways that I could see how you could end up with 50% of the company. And now I don't know the valuation, I don't know any of that, but knowing some recent private equity deals in franchising, well north of 100 million, franchisor sells to private equity and they have, let's just call it 10 locations owned by the franchisor. A franchisor gets bought out at 15x, 20x of EBITDA. That private equity company puts a 15 or 20x, that same valuation on the corporate stores. So that cash flow is valued at the same as the franchisor valuation. So instead of being valued at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6x cash flow as a normal, like kind of small business would, or a normal franchisee might have a valuation on that, the valuation is higher because it's going to be considered the same multiple at the franchisor. So I don't know if that had any impact on it with you, but I bet you probably
You're
had a higher valuation on your cash flow than you thought.
you're spot on. Yeah.
That is something that I don't think franchisors think about enough, or franchisees. I mean, you're the perfect example of that. And it's kind of a cheat code if it works out. For you, it was like the cheat code. Like that,
Yeah.
that was amazing. A brand that we're working on right now is just it's a category that we're getting into at Front Street. And it's one that we are setting aside a million or two or three from us to go in and have corporate locations, just because of what you said, Jared, just because of how that played out for you. And where else can you put have a main street business, a gym, a service base, whatever it is, and have a valuation that franchisors get, which when you tell people in the normal world out there what franchisors could sell for, like what they are actually trading for, not all of them, but the good ones are trading for, they're just like, you got to be kidding me. And so that's something that we're looking at doing just for that same reason. So I knew that. And like you were talking about that high valuation, I'm like, I think I know where that came from, which is
Yeah.
which is awesome. All right. Anything else that you want to share, whether, just you as a founder, you transitioning from franchisee to CEO, or just anything that you want to share before I let you go, because this has been very educational.
No, I don't. I'll just say that it's been a great. I guess I would just say it. I would give anybody that really has something they want to do. I always tell everybody. 30 years ago, I was making $5 an hour, and I said this should not have happened. I always say, if you want something, go for it. And if if I'm just somebody who's willing to risk it all, and I was willing to go all in, and that's how I am where I am. I mean, that's I always tell, I've said that there's, other than being willing to risk it all, I should not be sitting here today. But I'll outwork everybody, and I'm willing to risk it all, and I'm see angles and do things that probably a lot of people are not willing to do.
And I'll leave it with this. Some people underestimate one of their superpowers, seeing other things and willing to do other things that other people aren't. There's a lot of value in that. And that's one of the things we value at Front Street is the different angles, the different looks, the different ways that the different partners view things. And there's a lot of value in that. So Jerry, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. It was great.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.